So this is the time. Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you are in. My name is Marie Le Sourd, and I am the Secretary General of On the Move. On the Move is the international information and advocacy network focused on the mobility of artists and cultural professionals. We are co-founded by the European Union and the French Ministry of Culture, and through other many projects. Here today, so welcome to this info session, which is related to Mobility Info Point, or MIPs. The acronym for some people is MIPs or MIPs. Mobility Info Point are all members of On the Move. So we will have a 1 hour session to understand more about what are the Mobility Info Point, what are their action, their mission, their connection to the sector, particularly to artists and cultural professionals in mobility. One important point also of this info session is to understand how to set them up in your country, particularly in countries which are not yet covered by a mobility info point, because we have a few representatives here of mobility info point that are already located in Germany, France, Portugal, Slovenia, and I think we have also, Czech Republic. And we will have time also after the presentation for a short Q&A session. The session is recorded because more people wanted to attend, and we plan also to have this recording session on our YouTube channel. Before we start, I would like also just to ask you, as you are doing very well, so I don't have any, but just to say that if you can, mute yourself, and of course you can unmute yourself later during the Q&A session. With me today, I have the pleasure to have one of our colleagues from one of the first mobility info point, touring artists, the mobility info point in Germany, and Sebastian Hoffmann, who is one of the key advisor of mobility of touring artists, the mobility info point in Germany, will do this presentation about the MIPs, their mission, and how to set them up. So I pass now the word to Sebastian for an introduction, a quite detailed introduction. And after, don't worry, there will be as well time for Q&A for any question or comment you may have. Thank you very much. And Sebastian, the word is to you.
Thank you very much, Marie. Welcome everyone again. I'm Sebastian from the German Mobility Information Point. I work for the German Center of the International Theatre Institute, one of the 3 organizations that are behind the German MIP. And I'll share my screen now and show you a short presentation on what we do as a mobility information point. You will also then get the chance to download this presentation as a PDF file. I'll put that in the chat once I'm done. So the session is kind of targeted primarily for organizations or representatives of organizations who are interested in setting up a mobility information point in their country. I would like to just give you some background information on how we define ourselves as mobility information points, what we do, and also share a few tips and tricks or practical guidance that could be important for you if you're interested in setting one up in your country. So in a nutshell, mobility information points are projects or organizations or sub-organizations that are dedicated to helping artists and cultural professionals with the administrative issues of cross-border mobility through free information and free consultation services. And the key issues that we have identified in the last years are information on visas, cross-border social insurance, international taxation, and customs. So these are the 4 kind of main administrative topics. A mobility information point usually informs about temporary mobility. So for example, an artist on tour or an artist going to another country for an exhibition. But most mobility information points inform both on incoming and outgoing mobility to or from their country. What's really crucial about the work that we do is that we always offer our services to all sectors or artistic disciplines. So all current functioning MIPs cater to both performing, visual arts, creative industries, etc. And this can be sometimes a bit challenging for an organization that is currently only dedicated to one specific sector or artistic discipline. I'll tell you a little bit more about how we solve that issue in Germany. What's also really important is that the active mobility information points share the same mission, but they're very, very different regarding the scope of their activities and their organizational structure. And I'll also give you a few examples of this in a bit. So who are the main target groups for mobility information points? So it's not only artists, but also cultural professionals, such as producers, managers, etc., as well as organizations and businesses that need information regarding cross-border mobility issues, such as festivals, organizers, galleries, nonprofit associations, NGOs, etc. And according to our experience, most of the people that get in touch with us are freelance artists or cultural professionals, so self-employed persons who may not have access to a lawyer or to a specialized tax advisor to give them advice on their individual questions. Lots of larger companies do have in-house legal staff to do that, but we actually do sometimes even get requests from larger organizations in Germany that need help on cross-border issues, because we are kind of seen as the experts on this issue, sometimes even with higher expertise than a specialized lawyer or tax advisor. In some cases, government departments also see mobility information points as cooperation partners. In some countries, the mobility information point is run by a government departure or is a government departure. But in Germany, for example, we often get hired by local governments, especially to give advice to traveling artists. So why set up a mobility information point? This is probably quite self-evident, but having to deal with the kind of administrative challenges of cross-border mobility is seen as one of the major hurdles for a lot of artists and cultural professionals. They sometimes prevent cross-border exchange in the first place. So we get a lot of feedback from people who say, we don't want to work across borders because it's too difficult. And in this regard, our role or our mission is also to encourage people to still engage in cross-border mobility, raise awareness of the main issues, but also give them a kind of sense of hope that they can still do it with our assistance. I already said that a lot of freelance or self-employed artists or organizations often don't have their own resources to hire legal experts. So the idea is also that mobility information points can kind of fill that gap and especially be of assistance to emerging artists or nonprofit organizations. What we also see a lot is that some legal experts don't have the sufficient expertise or experience of the working conditions in the cultural sector. So in this sense, mobility information points also can serve as kind of intermediaries or administrative translators, as I call it here, to kind of bridge that gap between practice and the law. The recently published EU Cultural Compass also has a mention of these kind of the complexity of the working environment regarding cross-border administrative issues. I'm not going to read out the entire quote here, but it's definitely in there. So what are the topics that we mostly deal with? I already said that in the beginning, visas, international taxation, social insurance, and customs are kind of the main administrative issues. This is a screenshot from a report that we published for, I think, the year of 2024, where all the active mobility information points have gathered information on their consultations that they give. As you can see here, visas and residence work permits are definitely the biggest topic with 35%. And I just wanted to also give you a few examples of specific questions that we deal with a lot. So, for example, questions that we get a lot as a help desk service in Germany for outgoing mobility. So artists going from Germany abroad, how do I apply for the A1 certificate in terms of the coordination of social insurance in Europe? How do I send a cross-border invoice? Where do I apply for a Carne ATA for customs transport to other customs areas? Questions that we get regarding incoming mobility to Germany often include, how do I calculate withholding tax for non-resident performing artists? Do non-resident artists need a visa? And if yes, how can we help them apply for it? But there's, of course, many, many more questions. These are just some examples so that you know what we deal with on a daily basis. So which services do mobility information points provide? What is the kind of core of their activities? Most, or I think all mobility information points have a website that contains some sort of online information about cross-border administrative topics. These could include guides, FAQs, checklists, etc. Touring Artists in Germany probably has the most extensive website. Ours is more like a Wikipedia on these topics, whereas other mobility information points may only have some very specific guides on a particular topic. Yeah, but some kind of online presence is definitely like the first starting point to set up a mobility information point. Then most MIPs also offer tailor-made free consultations. So these could be online or in person via a Zoom call or a phone call or just via email, where an artist or a cultural professional or an organization can get in touch with the MIP. And even if the MIP may not have the answer to the question, most MIPs then serve as kind of first contact points that then signpost to official information on the government website or to other consultation services. Some MIPs also have a kind of in-house legal department that can advise on the aforementioned topics. And I'll talk a little bit about this kind of what is the difference between tailor-made consultation and legal advice in a bit. But not all MIPs have in-house lawyers, just to let you know. And then most MIPs are also engaged in workshops and seminars for artists unions or artist organizations. And these are often kind of awareness-raising events where the MIP will give an organization or artists a kind of overview of what they need to know when they are traveling across borders. For example, I think next week I will be traveling to the MENT Festival in Ljubljana to give a talk on cross-border mobility, a kind of touring survival kit invited by the MIP in Slovenia, Motovida, who are also here in this call today. What's really important, however, is that if you want to start a mobility information point, it does not mean that you have to have all of these 4 services set up immediately. They can be implemented gradually, and not every active MIP offers all of them. Like, for example, as touring artists, we do not necessarily offer legal advice because I'm not a lawyer myself. And we also did not offer any tailor-made consultations when we first started. That was a step that we did, I think, about 1 or 2 years after setting up our website. Yeah, so most MIPs start quite small and then gradually add a set of different services, the more they grow. All right. So there's a few other things that some mobility information points also offer. Some also offer information on mobility funding. So this big question, I'm going abroad, where can I get money? Or I'm inviting artists from abroad, who can fund that? This is not something that all MIPs do. Some of them are quite focused on this, actually. Dutch Culture, for example, the MIP in the Netherlands, mostly consults on outgoing mobility funding. But for us in Germany, it's actually not such a big topic. Only about 10% of our consultations are in mobility funding. So this is something that is kind of seen as an add-on. This is not like necessarily like an administrative topic, but if that's relevant to your target group or to artists living in your country or going to your country, that's something that definitely can be added through, again, specialized consultations or an online database or a guide or something. And then some MIPs also started consulting artists and cultural professionals seeking information on permanent relocation to their country, including artists at risk. This is something that we also do quite a lot with some additional funding that we get on a local level from the Berlin city government. But again, this is not something that all MIPs are doing, and this is also more to be seen as an add-on, providing information on artists who want to relocate or move to your country permanently. And for this kind of target group, artists at risk, permanent relocation, at least according to our experience, most questions are on visas, long stay visas, residence permits, access to the social insurance system of the new residence country, and information on career and funding opportunities. But yeah, I just think it's important to highlight again that these two topics are more seen as add-ons, but they're not the core mission of a mobility information point. The core mission is to provide information on administrative topics for everyone basically in the sector. So who could work for a mobility information point? Who could be advisors or staff members? And since I already said in the very beginning, the active MIPs are all very different regarding their organizational structure. So they also employ different models regarding their staff members. So some MIPs have internal legal professionals. I think Cultuurloket in Belgium, Dutch Culture, I think as well. They have in-house legal advisors. Some use external legal professionals. That's what we do, for example, for some of the topics that we advise on. Or a lot of MIPs also are staffed by non-legal internal staff, who are then often trained by legal professionals. That's the case for us. I'm not a lawyer, but I still do a lot of consultations on administrative topics, and we hire legal professionals that train us on a regular basis. The kind of advantage of having non-legal staff is sometimes that the non-legal staff has more work experience. They could be, for example, cultural professionals, managers, agents, producers who have long-lasting experience how things actually work. And then they often receive this kind of add-on training by legal professionals. Some MIPs also work with kind of sector-specific experts from other artists associations or unions that are hired maybe for a workshop or something similar. I also just wanted to quickly raise awareness of two consultation offices that exist on an European Union level that are not specific to the cultural sector, but they could be also interesting contacts for you if you're based in an EU country. So there's Your Europe Advice, which is a free consultation service on cross-border issues for European Union citizens, organized by ECAS, a nonprofit organization based in Brussels. And Your Europe Advice has lawyers in every single EU country. So you could also, for example, get in touch with your national chapter of Your Europe Advice and check if you can maybe cooperate or get some training from them. They also travel a lot to the different EU countries and offer in-person workshops. And Solvit is a kind of similar consultation service that is more targeted at actually solving issues where government agencies somehow do not follow European Union law correctly. And Solvit and Your Europe Advice, they also kind of cooperate with each other quite a lot. So if you don't know them yet, now you know them. All right, so then what could be a potential structure of a mobility information point? Again, I mentioned it already twice. They're all very different. So some of them are more like part of a governmental structure, such as Cultuurloket, which is funded by the Flemish government in Belgium, or Dutch Culture in the Netherlands. And in these two cases, just as examples, the mobility information points don't even have like their own name or brand, but they're more like subdivisions or departments of a larger structure. And in the EU, some MIPs are also directly affiliated to a Creative Europe desk. That's, I think, the case in the Netherlands and also in Slovenia. So that's not a must, of course. In Germany, for example, we don't really have any cooperation with the Creative Europe desk. We're more like an independent project, but this is also something that is a possibility to kind of link up with the Creative Europe desk or have a mobility information point connected to a Creative Europe desk. The second model that we've seen with the active MIPs is that they're run by one or more independent organizations, but financed by government project funding, for example. This is our model in Germany. So Touring Artists is not a legal entity, but it's a project run by 3 artists associations, the German chapter of the International Theatre Institute, the German Dance Association, and the International Association of Visual Art. So we're like more like a cooperation project of 3 large organizations. And on top of performing arts and visual arts, we also, of course, cater to all other sectors. So we also have more like looser cooperations with organizations in the other sectors. But if you currently work for a sector-specific organization, it could make sense maybe to team up with other organizations catering to other sectors in your country, and then maybe approach your national government as a kind of a team or a set of organizations that want to do this together. And then just as a little add-on, in the United States, the Mobility Information Point Tamizdat is neither part of the government nor financed by the government. Instead, it's more like a pro bono legal service connected to a law firm dedicated to artistic mobility. So that's also an option. So yeah, there's a lot of different models here, and every country that currently has an active MIP has somehow found their niche or their organizational structure that fits. So what is the required budget or number of staff members for an MIP? And that, of course, really depends on the mobility information points overall structure, but also the size of the country or the market. We published a guide on how we work with a lot more details, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. And in this guide, you can also see the actual numbers, like the budget and the staff members of the MIPs. But in general, their budget is between 15 and 150,000 euros per year. And the staff kind of ranges from 0.25 to 3 full-time equivalents. So that's to give you like an example. But again, it's very different depending on the country. So what are some strategies to convince your local or national government to fund a mobility information point? So also kind of based on the guide that we published, which you can also download as a PDF file on the MOVE website, some of the kind of arguments that we collected kind of really depend on your country's market, or whether it's more like an outgoing or export country, or more like an incoming or import country. But for countries that are more focused on incoming mobility, like Germany, for example, we often argue that the presence of international artists kind of boosts the attractiveness or prestige and the local economy as well. So it's good that the administrative kind of procedures are as seamless as possible. And also sometimes we argue that our activities assist and kind of decrease the workload for government offices, because we give this really highly specialized or niche advice for the sector. And of course, for more like export-oriented countries, you can always argue supporting domestic artists to showcase their work or to be more visible globally is very good. And you can help them to have the best information possible, so that they're not rejected at the border of the other country, for example, or that they have a good kind of understanding of how international taxation works. For organizations based in another European Union country, you also have a really good kind of more like lobbying argument here, because the European Parliament published a resolution in November of 2023 that specifically mentions or recommends setting up and adequately funding mobility information points in all member states. You can also download that recommendation, or there's a link to it in this presentation. So then coming to a close, almost what is the MIP working group of On the Move? You may have already heard that the active mobility information points form a kind of working group within On the Move. So all active MIPs, or the organizations behind them, are members of On the Move. And a few years ago, we set up a kind of landing page, part of the On the Move website, that serves as a kind of one-stop shop. So if an artist or cultural professional is interested in the services of an MIP, they could be directed to this landing page, and then they could find the respective MIP based on this page. So if you want to create an MIP, then you can also be listed on this landing page. The working group does a few other things as well. So we meet online on Zoom every 6 weeks to discuss recent developments, attend training sessions together, or prepare joint activities, such as an event or publishing a joint checklist. We also meet in person, roughly at least twice a year. Usually we meet for the On the Move Cultural Mobility Forum, which will take place in Skopje, North Macedonia this year. But in many cases, the working group also sets up another meeting in a different country. Last year, for example, in November, we met in Berlin for the 70th anniversary of the International Theatre Institute in Germany. And then a few years ago, we started to collect data on our activities, namely the individual consultations that we do and our engagement activities, so events, for example. And this data is collected and analyzed by On the Move, and then published as a yearly report. And I think we can happily announce that the report for our activities in 2025 was just published today. So I think Marie will also share the link to the report. So this is kind of a little bit work that you would need to do if you also set up personal consultations, because you will need to kind of log every consultation that you do in an online form, so that it can be analyzed for this yearly report. Yeah, but the report is really interesting. I think it will get even more interesting the more data we have across the years. It could also serve as an interesting kind of data and numbers tool for lobbying purposes. So if you're interested in kind of joining our working group, you can always join an online meeting as a guest to kind of see what we're doing and what we're discussing. And if you're ready to kind of take the next step, then we also offer tailor-made mentoring sessions for organizations. This is something that we do on a very kind of case-by-case basis. Sometimes it makes sense that an organization in a particular country is mentored by an MIP in a country of a similar size or a similar political organization. So just get in touch with Marie if you're interested in that. And if your organization is not formally a member of On the Move, they would then need to join On the Move to be also listed on the landing page as a mobility information point. But again, it's really important that you can only be listed if you kind of offer the main service, or at least one of the kind of 4 services that I presented earlier. So have a website, have a contract address, provide some online information, and in the best case scenario, also have a contact to get some tailor-made advice. And I already mentioned this before as well. We have this handbook, which we published in November 2023 with the support of ICAS as part of a project we did with them. So you can find a lot more information about details on the topics that we consult on how the MIPs are organized in this handbook. All right, and then just a little bit of a snapshot of the report that was published today. So last year, all of the 11 active MIPs did more than 2,300 individual tailor-made consultations. And as a working group, we organized 119 events, not all together, of course, as joint events, but also individual events, reaching more than 5,000 participants. In total, all the MIPs have 90,000 social media followers, 70,000 newsletter subscribers, almost 1 million website users, and a page view of more than 1 million. So there's already a really good reach that we have. And I think the more the better in a way, because one of the major kind of benefits of the working group is that we can also discuss specific cross-border cases together. So I often reach out to my colleague Anaïs, for example, in France, who is here today as well, who has, of course, a much better understanding of the French system than I do for, specific France-related questions. And the more MIPs we are, the more kind of back and forth consultations we can do. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's kind of like a snapshot of what we do, who we are. If you have any further information, here's Marie Lesour's email address again, mobility@onthemove.org. And I think we still have about 25 minutes to try to answer your questions. And also, again, there's representatives of other MIPs here, Anaïs Lucatz of Mobiculture in France, Mafalda Sebastião of the Mobility Information Point in Portugal, Nika Mušić and Vita Rao of Motovila in Slovenia, and Barbora Novotná of Czech Mobility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for this very clear and detailed presentation about the mobility info point. I will also just add one number. I mean, now we are very proud also to share our numbers in relation with the work of the MIPs. So we just published today the new report, the new annual report in a way of the mobility info point, and we really see that MIPs are in demand. On average, for the 10 mobility info points that are located in Europe, there is on average 45 individual consultation per week. So we really see these needs, this growing need. You will see as well in the report that there is a more global outreach as well in terms of where the requests are coming from in relation, in particular, to a European country. So we will start with some questions. So thank you as well, Sebastian, to share the presentation in the chat. It will be also sent by email also to people that could not attend this meeting but that register for it. So there is a first very practical question, but practical questions are always important. This is also what Mobility Info Point are about. So I take the question of April. So from the chat, since Mobility Info Point is mostly administrative, as a multimedia creative based in the UK, what is the best way to move forward with exploring remote work in Sweden or France? So if Sebastian, you have an answer.
Yeah, so I guess that...
And other Mobility Info Point as well, yeah.
Sure, I guess that you are an artist and not a member of an organization that wants to set up an MIP. So in this case, there's kind of 3 countries involved. There's the UK, that's where you're based, and there's also your kind of destination countries, Sweden and France. So I would then suggest getting in touch basically with all 3 mobility information points. The one in the UK, Arts Info Point UK, that could help you with information about what that means, working remotely in other countries, maybe also regarding your tax status in the UK, your social insurance status, but then also get in touch with your destination countries. So the MIPs in Sweden and France, and luckily there are MIPs in both countries, to get more information on how, you are taxed there, whether you need a work permit to do remote work, etc. So all 3 in this case.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Since we are a small group, you can just raise your real hand or your virtual hand, and also after we'll give you the floor.
Maybe I can also just add on April's question. We as MIPs...
Who are you, Anaïs?
Sorry, I'm sorry. So I'm working for the French MIP, so the French Mobility Info Point, which is Mobiculture. And I just wanted to add that, as you understood, we give information on administrative issues. So we really can help people who has projects, people having projects when the projects are settled. So here, working remotely is a project, so we can maybe delve into the administrative questions. But as Mobility Info Point, the core of our expertise is not on finding work opportunities or work, like for example, venues to perform, or this kind of services, which is really linked to the artistic projects themselves. So we really, once again, I want to focus on, we really work on administrative issues. So here, working remotely for a UK-based organization, then we can try to find effectively the best solutions, or to give you info on the implications of that. But it won't be, for France, actually, it won't be like finding work or opportunities.
Thank you, Anaïs, for this important note. Any other question? Yes, Roberto. And yes. Same if you can introduce who you are, and after, of course, raise your question or your comment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the information, Sebastian. It was very clear. My name is Roberto Achaturian. I'm working with ArtLink. Some of my colleagues are also here. We are an NGO based in Switzerland. We have different activities. One of them is supporting cultural practitioners and artists from the global south that perform in Switzerland. And we manage a fund for this. It's a governmental fund. And we are also often approached with questions to visa. This is something that we often meet. And we often don't have the correct answer, because we realized that the visa decisions are increasingly outsourced in the countries and often hard to challenge. And my question would be, what kind of legal guidance can a MIP actually provide? And if a visa gets denied, what support do you offer that a that a state or a cultural office typical can't?
Right. Yeah, very good question. I think it really depends on, the MIP structure and what their possibilities are. So I'm just going to say a few words on what we do, and then I think I also want to ask Anais to say a few words about what France is doing in that regard. So in Germany, what we do is, best case scenario, we get approached by the inviting organization as early as possible, or by the artist who wants to travel. And I guess in your case, it's mostly Schengen visas, to give them the best information possible beforehand, so that they include all the necessary documentation in their application and don't make any mistakes in a way that could be prevented. So in this case, our work is mostly kind of based on raising awareness and giving best information possible to submit the best possible application. But we in Germany don't really have any direct contacts to the government, so we cannot influence a decision when a visa is rejected. It's not something we can do. We wish we could, but there's also maybe something that could put the hopes up too high, because again, the primary role of an MIP is information, not necessarily solving specific visa cases. We are thinking about implementing something like a kind of intermediary way of dealing with Schengen visa applications with the German government at the moment, but we're not sure if this is ever going to work out. But it's modeled after something that already exists in France, the so-called Comité Visa Artiste. And I'll leave the word to Anaïs to say a few words about that.
Yes, so effectively in France, we, as Mobility Info Point, Mobiculture really work on the same level of information. So it's really on giving information so that the visa applications are the best as possible and can really be okay and pass and get the visa. So we do the same, the same information service as touring artists, or I guess all MIPs. But then in France, there is another organization, which is actually a network called Zone Franche, dedicated to world music in France, but they have developed a project that goes beyond this sector, this music specific genre, and it's called Comité Visa Artiste, as Sebastian said, and it's there to help or to try to solve visa situations. So there is the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Interior and Culture. So 3 ministries are supposed to be really part of it. But here the final decisions, when there is a problem, when there is really a complicated situation, go to the Ministry of Interior, Home Affairs, that could normally get in touch with the consulate, but it's this link is becoming to be more complicated than before, but at least the project, the Comité Visa Artiste try to do this. When there is a situation, sometimes with help, we analyze what could be the problem, and if we don't see why there is a problem, and it's really like depending on the consulate, we can pass it. I mean, Zone Franche, the world music sector network, can send it to the Ministry of Home Affairs to try to solve it, but that's we don't. I mean, Comité Visa Artiste can't promise anything, but it's here to try to solve situations. So that's really interesting. But here we as MIPs really we really work on the information part, which is already a lot, because sometimes people like we can really raise awareness on this document, or okay, it's the first time the artist will leave his or her country, then get in touch with the cultural attaché, and this kind of advice we deliver as Mobility Info Point is really there to prevent any blockage afterwards, any situation. So the best is to combine the both sides of the work, but unfortunately, the Comité Visa Artistes can get situations solved. Situations solved are less than they used to be. They used to be.
Yeah, so you can kind of see that this is something that only France does at the moment. And the other MIPs don't really have set up a similar cooperation, or there's no kind of back channels or so that we can open. Just for your information, I just put another link in the chat because we recently published a kind of subsection on our website about these external visa agencies that are used by the German embassies for Schengen visa applications, with a few tips and tricks in there or some background on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you, Roberto, for your question, and Sebastian and Anaïs for the answer. And maybe also to add on what was said on this two-level, but also complementary level of action, the one of informing artists and cultural professionals, and the one of advocating for better conditions as far as visa are concerned, but also all social protection, taxation, regulation are concerned as well. And here we try also very much to play on this complementarity between the mobility info point and On the Move as also an information, but also as an advocacy network. So the information that we collect also through the MIPs are also very important for MIPs because they can also show what they do and that they are very much demanded by the sector. But we can also compile information in relation with a new form of regulation, for instance, that are being tested or that are being proposed. And in fact, in relation with the EU, the Schengen Code of Visa, we just have, I mean, you may have heard that there is that the European Commission had this first ever EU visa strategy. So we just share a few comments about it. And of course, we will follow that very closely in relation with the arts and cultural sector. And of course, the action related to the mobility info point are very important to take into consideration because they are the best one to know the level of complexity that mobile artists and cultural professionals are facing. Is there any other question or remark? Of course, they can also come after by email if needed.
I just want to maybe share two other extra things. So first, Roberto, if you're interested in following, the discussion a bit more regarding Switzerland, we have also been in touch with other organizations in Switzerland that you could maybe kind of team up with, specifically Sonart, the organization for musicians, Visart. We are already cooperating with them on like bilateral checklists for customs and visual arts, and also smaller organizations like Art FAQ in Zurich and Kulturhub in Basel. So there's already a little bit of action going on in a way, and we're also happy to kind of introduce you to other organizations in Switzerland. And then the other thing, kind of going back to April's question, I just wanted to share, I already put this in a chat as well as a comment, that there's actually a really interesting online resource on this question of remote work in Europe, which was developed by ECAS, this nonprofit organization in Belgium that I already mentioned. I'm just going to put this in the chat again. It's a kind of chatbot called Eric that was trained for 12 months. To solve or to answer questions on primarily social insurance and remote work in the EU.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And talking about resources, you have also a lot of resources under the mobility info point subsite of On the Move, where you find also a lot of guides, and the one also co-produced or produced by Pearl for instance, on visa-related issues, social protection, taxation as well. You have also a lot of bilateral checklists in between countries, including those co-produced by touring artists or also mobiculture. So you find also a lot of information that can be also useful either directly for you or for the artist and cultural professional that you are in exchange with. However, as you could notice with this presentation, access to information with guides or bilateral checklist is great, but in many cases, this direct interaction, consultation with people that can, advise artists and particularly independent one and also independent art company or cultural producer is very key because maybe the sector is better equipped about this question, but at the same time, the level of complexity is also being increased. And sometimes people come to be advised on a particular question, but in fact, it's another aspect of their work that will be touched on, from social protection to taxation or visa-related issue. Okay, last question or comment? No, I think.
Maybe I can just.
Oh yeah, Mafalda from.
Just for a second, because
Lisbon, the mobility info point in Lisbon. Yeah.
Yes, my name is Mafalda. We have this mobility info point in Lisbon. It's directly dependent on the Lisbon municipality, so it's another model. But I just wanted to say that our next MIP meeting will be on the 4th of March, in case anyone would be interested to participate. So if so, please let us know through On the Move, and we'll send you the agenda so you can decide whether you want to have part of it or not, as an observer, of course. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a good point, Mafalda, and I am putting in the chat my email address. I mean, the contact email address that was provided as well at the end of the PowerPoint by Sebastian. Thank you for this. And the mobility info point of Portugal will be the new coordinator of the group as well after the Art Info Point UK during 2 or 3 years, I think. Okay, I think we are good. So you understand that this info session is more in a step, I would say, in the process to learn more about the mobility info point, eventually to set one mobility info, to help you to set up a mobility info point in your own country, or to advocate also better to contribute to the creation of a mobility info point in your country. I would like to thank very much all the MIPs that were represented today, all of you, but of course, Sebastian. Sebastian, you are always super clear into making this presentation. And as you highlighted as well, so we have our next internal mobility info point on the 1st of March, but we will have as well our cultural mobility forum in Skopje. And I know, if I am not mistaken, that there is one person from Skopje, from North Macedonia here, Lydia, from the Creative Europe desk in Skopje. So it was also for me a way to acknowledge you and our partnership. And so hopefully for some of our members and anybody interested, we will meet again in Skopje, where there will be a long table discussion about visa issue, including with myself and Sebastian, and also Florent Mehmeti from Kosovo. So thank you very much. The program for the forum and other related events will be available from mid-February. So for you to know as well, for the moment is the general outline. Thank you very much and have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.